we were in the book of Daniel, and we started talking about problems that they had with what is actually the most popular understanding of end time and the end time eschatology, and that is about a revived Roman Empire, and that the Antichrist would come out of a revived Roman Empire. And we looked at several scriptures last time and saw that the Lord's judgment and wrath was directed at a group of nations and peoples that actually were Muslim majority nations that surrounded Israel, all the nations around Israel. And they're all named in the scriptures, and we saw where God's judgment was going to fall on them because he said, he had a controversy with them about what they've done with Jerusalem, with Israel, with his people, and because of their hatred for them. Now, we saw that there was not a single solitary European nation mentioned in the scriptures. It was all the nations that surround Israel, the Moabites and Esau, and of course we're talking about an area there that now is the modern Hashemite kingdom of Jordan in that vicinity, and all the ones all the way around them. Okay, so Howie said, well, how did they get started on this idea that it was going to be out of the Roman Empire? Well, that's a very good question, and we didn't really have time to answer that, and I am short on time again tonight because we want to conclude our Bible study tonight, and I wanted to give you an update on current things that are happening right now in the region there in the Middle East that are very important for us to keep our eye on as we look at what prophetic implications they may have. So, but we'll try to answer Howie's question right quick, and we'll start in Daniel chapter 2. And there's basically four primary reasons or for the support of this theory, the Roman Empire theory. And the first is their understanding of the vision that is in Daniel chapter 2, and that was this metal colossus, and it had a head of gold and arms and chest of silver and belly of brass and legs of iron mixed with clay for the feet, and they have their idea of who that represents. Okay, and we'll deal with that in just a little bit. But then the other thing is also what it says in Daniel chapter 7. In Daniel chapter 7, instead of using the idea of a colossus, Daniel presents it in the format of beast. We have to remember that even though they use different symbols and types, it's always the same story, okay? There's just one story. And whether you're in Daniel or Ezekiel or Isaiah, they're all telling the same story, and they all give a little different information. They may use different types and symbols to illustrate and tell the story, but it's always the same story. And so the beasts in Daniel 7 tell the same story as the Colossus in Daniel chapter 2. All right, now, in Daniel 9:26, the other thing is they said, well, in Daniel 9:26, it says it's going to be for the people, the people of the prince to come, and we'll look at that. And then the fourth one is in Revelation 17, the city on 7 hills. Those four things. and we're going to take them one at a time and look at them right quick. So let's start in Daniel chapter 2 and verse 36. Daniel 2:36. This is the dream. Now we will tell the interpretation of it before the king. You, O king, are a king of kings, for the God of heaven has given you a kingdom, power, strength, and glory. And wherever the children of men dwell, or the beasts of the field, and the birds of the heaven, he has given them into your hand, and has made you ruler over them all. You are this head of gold. Okay, after you shall arise another kingdom inferior to yours, then another, a third kingdom of bronze, which shall rule over all the earth. And a fourth kingdom shall be as strong as iron. Let me stop there. So Daniel is telling the king what's going to happen, that there's going to be a succession of other kingdoms that'll follow his kingdoms, and they were inferior to his, but we need to find out who they are. Let's keep reading. It says, verse to go back to 39. And after you shall arise another kingdom inferior to yours, then a third kingdom of bronze, which shall rule over you all the earth, and the fourth kingdom shall be as strong as iron, inasmuch as iron breaks in pieces and shatters everything like iron that crushes, and the kingdom will break in pieces and crush all the others. Okay? Now, these kingdoms are identified in the scriptures. The first kingdom we just saw, he said that's Babylon. You're the head of gold. And in Daniel chapter 7, as we go through here, the other kingdoms are identified by name, and we'll get to them. But you can look at Daniel. Well, let's just take it, Michael. Let's look at Daniel chapter 8, verses 20. Okay, right here. It says, well, I'm going to start at 19. He said, look, I'm making known to you what shall happen in the latter time of the indignation, for at the appointed time and the end shall be, the ram which you saw having the two horns, they are the kings of Persia and Media and Persia. The male goat is the kingdom of Greece, okay? And so we see, let me read the next one too. The large horn between his eyes is the first king. As for the broken horn and the four that stood up in its place, 4 kingdoms shall rise out of that nation, but not with its power. And so what he's saying here is that the first kingdom is Babylon, and the second kingdom is the kingdom of the Medes and the Persians, and the third one is Greece, and that one, it says its power will be broken. It's speaking of Alexander the Great, and then it's going to have 4 generals. That the kingdom was divided up among the 4 generals that preceded him. Okay? Now, the thing is, in all of this, the 4th kingdom is not named. And yet, they made the assumption that it had to be Rome, and so they put Rome in there. But we need to go back and look and see, does Rome fit the definition of what the Bible teaches about the kingdom? All right? Look what it says here in verse 40. And the 4th kingdom shall be as strong as iron, inasmuch as iron breaks in pieces and shatters everything like iron that crushes, and the kingdom will break in pieces and crush all the others. That is important right there. Crush all the others. Let's say they're right, and Jesus comes back, and he destroys the revived Roman Empire, okay, which was the kingdom of the Antichrist, they say. The problem of that is that if he did do that, 2/3 of all the other three kingdoms, the geographical landmass that they conquered and that they ruled over, would still be intact, because Rome did not reach that far to the east. And we're gonna get some definitions tonight about how far their kingdom did go and what area it did meet. But there's never a time in history where the Roman Empire actually fulfilled Daniel 2:40 and it crushed all the others. It never crushed all the others at the same time. Never did. And what they did conquer left 2/3 of it untouched. Okay, so it doesn't fit. However, an Islamic caliphate does. The Rashidun Caliphate from 632 AD until the end of the Ottoman Empire, which is 1923. That kingdom did crush all three at the same time and occupy all that land, and they excuse me. And you have to look at, we went through all this before in detail, so I'm kind of skimming along here and we're missing some details, but I got to shorten it up. But the bottom line was, Rome did not crush and destroy the culture and the kingdoms that it conquered. All right. In fact, what they were famous for is building roads and commerce and connecting things together. And they embraced the Greek language. All right. And it wasn't, but wherever the Islamic nations went, they destroyed everything. They wiped out any previous history completely, and they made it all Islamic. I mean, today, you look at the latest, like the Taliban, that when they took over, they wiped out those statues that had been there for centuries. The Christianity in what had been the cradle of Christianity is just about completely obliterated now. It's all Islamic, and you can see that they have put their imprint. That whole area now speaks Arabic, and it's all, they have. But Islam means submission, surrender, and they want absolute and total surrender, and that's what they demanded, and so that's what they created. Now, right quick, we read in Daniel. I'm going to shift over there right quick. Let's go back to here where we were in Daniel chapter 7, where it said, let me do this before I go there. Let me just say this first. The other thing is the kingdom of Rome. It had the eastern part, the Byzantine. They were only divided for 140 years. They're trying to get the division to say there was two legs, two different parts, but that's not a very long time. Whereas with the Islamic kingdom, there is a division, and it has been long term, and where it's well understood. We got Shia and Sunni, and it's interesting too, where it says that let's go down here, verse 41. Whereas you saw the feet, toes, partly potter's clay, partly of iron, the kingdom shall be divided. Yet the strength of iron shall be just as you saw the iron mixed with ceramic clay, And as the toes of the feet were partly of iron, partly of clay, the kingdom shall be partly strong and partly fragmented. As you saw the iron mixed with ceramic clay, they will mingle with the seed of men, but they will not adhere to one another, just as iron does not mix with clay. That's an interesting word, mingle. You see, the Islamic kingdom, it was back in that time. You had the Parthians and the Sassanids. They were Medo-Persian. In fact, Daniel 7 and verse 12 acknowledges that there was that kind of like a revival of that kingdom that during that time. But the thing is, where it talks about mingled here, the actual word in the Arabic is Arab, and in the Hebrew it's E-R-E-B. And the thing is, it says they are Arab, and it was because the descendants of Esau and Ishmael so intermarried with the desert people all to the east of Israel, they became known as the mixed ones. And we have an interesting scripture that acknowledges that, and that's in Nehemiah 13. Let's go over there right quick. Nehemiah chapter 13. Verses 1 to 3. It said, on that day they read from the book of Moses in the hearing of the people, and it was found written that no Ammonite or Moabite should ever come into the assembly of God, because they had not met the children of Israel with bread and water, but hired Balaam against them to curse them. However, our God turned the curse into a blessing. So it was, when they had heard the law, that they separated all of the what? Mixed multitude from Israel. They realized they were not supposed to have Moabite or Ammonite wives. And they separated. When they got the book of the law back and they read it, they realized they'd been violating it. And so they changed. And that's what they were called. They were the mixed ones. So when you go back to where we were here, where it says, the reason that it doesn't stay together, it's that it's mingled, is because they are Arab. Well, we've got Sunni and Shia, all right? The only thing that they're fighting each other, but the thing that they're united in is their hatred for Israel and the Jews, and that under the leadership of the Antichrist will bring them together on that. Now let's go over right quick to Daniel chapter 9, because this is one of the main points on their theory that they talk about. Daniel chapter 9. All right, it says right here, this is verse 26 is one of the main supports for the revived Roman Empire theory. It says, and after 62 weeks, Messiah shall be cut off, but not for himself, and the people of the prince who is to come shall destroy the city and the sanctuary. Okay, the end of it shall be with a flood, and the end of war. Desolations are determined. Now, the thing was, with that, the people of the prince, they said, they were talking about the fact that Rome had destroyed the temple. Remember, Titus came in AD 70 and destroyed it. And but the problem with that is they had Augustus had a reformation back in AD 15, where the soldiers, instead of being Roman soldiers, because they're saying Roman soldiers were the ones that destroyed the temple, and that's who this is going to be. Well, since that time with AD 15, only the Praetorian Guard were Romans. What they started doing was they started recruiting what they called provincials. These were the people that were citizens in the areas that they had conquered. And a lot of those people were Arabic. And we have a lot of history from that time, and I'll read you just a little bit of it. And it says right here, Tacitus, who was a senator, a historian, he said this. He said, Titus found in Judea 3 legions, the 5th, the 10th, and the 15th. And he added some people from the 12th, from Syria, and some from the 1st and the 3rd. And they were accompanied by a strong contingent of Arabs that hated their neighbors, the Jews. Josephus said, Titus got his forces in Syria and from a number of auxiliaries. Malchus, king of Arabia, sent 1,000 horsemen and archers, 5,000 footmen, and Malchus sent more than a full legion, a total of 60,000 troops. Okay? And so we have other testimony, historic testimony, that they went in a rage and they tore everything apart, and Titus could not control them. They hated the Jews more than they feared their commander. It's some interesting history if you want to take the time to explore it. So there's a lot of things that mitigate against this theory, but hopefully that's part of help you understand what are some of our objections to this. And we want to go ahead now and get into some other areas that we need to spend a little time out here before we close things out with this, and then we'll get back to our to our study here in September. Everybody take the summer off here because everybody around here goes nuts trying to get things done before the snow flies. So anyway, a lot of things been happening. I want to look at the post-Gaza situation. You know, Trump had come on and made a proposal that the United States take that area over, and we do we're in charge of the reclamation, the cleanup, and to take and relocate all the Palestinians into Egypt and Jordan. Well, as soon as he made that proposal, the Arab League called a hasty meeting, and they got together, and it was spearheaded by Assisi, which is the leader of Egypt, and they put together a post-war Gaza plan, and it was a threefold plan, a three-phase plan, and that they said they needed $3 billion in about 6 months to for clearing operations and get it all cleaned up and ready to start building, and it would be managed by an interim committee of Palestinian technocrats, and until a reformed Palestinian Authority would assume control of Gaza. Well, who's that? That's Mahmoud Abbas. Now, they had their split. Hamas split from them, and that used to be the PLO, and People's Liberation. And anyway, the thing is that this doesn't work for people that are concerned about extremism, Islamic extremism. to have them in control of anything. So that second phase was a $20 billion idea, 2 years. And during that time, they wanted to get all the housing built. They said to get the housing built within 30 months. They wanted to put an airport, a seaport, industrial zone, and all of this. The third phase then, well, again, this is all overseen by the Palestinian technocrats and a steering committee and a management committee of other Arab authorities, but it would all be under the authority of Mahmoud Abbas, and he promised elections then within 1 year. Okay, well, first of all, there were a couple of folks that didn't show up. Very important, and that is Crown Prince bin Salman did not come, and the UAE. Those are the two big players in the area. They're the ones that have the deep pockets that would be responsible to come up with money to fund all of this. Well, they didn't come because they're not in favor of this plan. And the first thing that they were concerned about was that it doesn't guarantee the eradication of Hamas, and it wouldn't create the stability in the area to develop something like this. And so the Crown Prince has voiced his opposition to the Islamic extremism and groups like Hamas all the way back to 2017. And I'm going to read a quote. He said this, and this has gone viral here recently on the international media, and that is, he said, "We want to go back to what we were, the moderate Islam that is open to the world, open to all religions. 70% of Saudis are less than 30 years old, and quite frankly, we will not waste 30 years of our lives in dealing with extremist ideas. We'll destroy them today." Well, from other discussions that we've had, we know what's going on in Saudi Arabia. They're in the middle of fulfilling their the vision of Crown Prince Salman for 2030 in a kingdom state that they're calling NEOM, N-E-O-M, and that is in northwestern Saudi Arabia. Tremendous investment because both Saudi Arabia and the UAE are moving away from oil as the main revenue source for their nations, and they want to move it into tourism, and they've got they have the Red Sea, and they're trying to make it a luxury place for tourism and places to go. Plus, they have the Muslim tourism because they have the Hajj and they have Mecca and Medina, the holy cities are there. All right, and so they want to move in that direction, but they have to soften the face of Islam. They cannot have the Muslim extremism if they're going to attract the investment capital and the tourism and the things that they want to do to fulfill their vision to do this. The UAE has already built the world's largest airport in order to accommodate the number of people that will be coming into the region. Saudi Arabia will outdo them and build the largest airport, even bigger than theirs, that'll be finished this year. And so they're moving lots of resources in that direction. I told you they're building the wall. That's a double building, two buildings that'll run from the coast into the interior. These buildings are 1,600 feet tall and 110 miles long. So it's a huge city. It'll be the most modern thing, 15-minute city idea. Everybody's in there. All kinds of things they're trying to do that'll be absolutely mind-boggling. Okay, so they have to make changes. and they desperately want to secure the financial help that they need and the stability in the region by having good relations with Israel. They want the Abraham Accords. They want the relationship with the United States. And so they're investing lots of money to go in this direction and get away from the oil, and they can't tolerate Islamic extremism like Hamas. The second problem was they didn't want the Egyptians' involvement because they're famous for mismanaging the money. A lot of bribery, corruption, and that kind of stuff, embezzlement, and so they didn't want to get involved in that and contribute billions of dollars to not have any good return on their investment. Third thing is they realized that the Arabs are not in a position to dictate all the demands to the United States. Saudi Arabia was very eager. They'd like to have nuclear capabilities. They're scared to death of Iran, and they want the protection from Iran. And Egypt, of course, is saddled with $150 billion in international debt, and they're subsidized by loans from the U.S., and so they can't dictate all the policies. They have to. They need us, put it that way. The fourth thing is with their plan was a non-starter because the Saudis understand that they need to have security guarantees that are linked to a normalization of relationships with Israel. That's the Abraham Accords, and there's lots of reasons for the Abraham Accords that they need that we're not going to have time to lay them all out for you tonight, but we'll talk about them again. But they have to kind of walk a tightrope because at the same time, while they desire these things, they have to, they can't offend the Muslim population that still is sympathetic to a two-state resolution for the Gazans, for the Palestinians. Now, something that just took place, and that was just like 2-3 weeks ago. There's been a new port agreement in Haifa. Haifa is the main port in Israel, all right? And what they have done is absolutely mind-boggling. They just inked a deal with China to double the size of China's operations in the port. And of course, China is famous for surveillance, all their cranes that offload all the surveillance and that kind of stuff. And they're dismissing this agreement as a matter of efficiency, making the port more efficient and a foreign investment opportunity. But what it does, it takes and puts China right on our doorsteps as far as our naval operations over there, because they will be right next to us, and we have so much going on there. That's such an important area. So you've got China doing joint naval drills with Iran, arms sales to the Houthis, and they put a chokehold on the Suez Canal and the Bab el-Mandeb Strait, which is the entrance, a very narrow entrance going into the Red Sea. Okay, and anyway, behind all this, what China's thinking, China is trying to put the kibosh on the Indian East Europe Economic Corridor. We talked about that before. China has the Road and Belt Initiative, where they're trying to build this elaborate network to get goods and services from China to the rest of the world, especially into Europe. Well, India just put together this with Europe, and they have plans to go and make a corridor that goes ultimately to Europe. This puts them right in the same spot and tries and is trying to make it so it's not economically acceptable for them. They'd like to kill that completely and take control of the area. Now, we talked before what China does, yeah. And so anyway, they're trying to stop this thing. And we told you before that, you know, all the commerce and all the activity that goes on with these undersea cables, the choke point for that is the Suez Canal. That's where it's easy to intercept things, and it happens all the time. Well, they had a way with this new India East European economic corridor. Israel had agreed, they've never done this before, but they agreed to allow the communications to go through there, Israel. And so all of this is, they've got to clamp this down. This is not a good thing that's going on. All right, now the other thing that's happened is Trump, while he met with King Solomon, Prince Solomon, he had talked about the fact that they're going to lift the restrictions on Syria, okay? And you say, oh, wow, okay. This guy that is, I forget his name, the new head of Syria, you know, that they got Assad out. He's been devastating on Christians. They just massacred him. You know, out of the Christian community in the Middle East before all this started was 1.1 million. Now we're down to about 100,000 Christians in the whole area left, and that's the birthplace of Christianity. They wonder if they're going to be able to hang on. It's a horrendous thing that's happened. But anyway, now he's saying, well, you know, forget my terrorist past. We want to be accepted as a nation, and we want to cooperate. Well, Trump said, okay, we're going to lift the sanctions, and that was at the request of Prince Solomon. And so why would they want to do that? Well, it's because both Saudi Arabia and the UAE and Israel are being targeted by both Iran and Turkey. And this way, by doing this, it helps to create a buffer between Iran and Lebanon for getting all their weapons and support to Hezbollah and causing mayhem. It helps create a buffer there, and it also helps to interrupt things for Turkey. And so they're trying to create a little bit of a buffer right there to help stop some of this. And the other thing is that the Taliban, all of a sudden it came up that they're talking about, well, maybe we're going to lift the sanctions on the Taliban. Well, again, you have to remember the Taliban are Sunni, okay? And so we're trying to put a Sunni buffer between Saudi Arabia and Israel and Iran. And that's kind of, I think, what's back of some of their thinking. And this India East European Economic Corridor, if that whole thing would link together India, UAE, Saudi Arabia, Jordan, Israel with Europe. Be a tremendous thing, and it's all tied together with the Abraham Accords. So that's part of what's going on. But another thing that we wanted to talk about here, how much time we got?
About 15 minutes.
I got 15 minutes. Oh, we're good to go. All right. The other thing that's going on, we saw, and and that is ISIS. We're all familiar with how fast they put together a caliphate, and the bloodletting, and we saw it all on TV. It was a terrible time. The Islamic State of Iraq and Syria. But there's another one out there. It's called ISIS-K, and the K stands for Khorasan. And the thing is, the area of Khorasan, that is an ancient area, a kingdom. It included all the stands, the eastern part of Persia, of Iran, the northeastern part, and then it had Afghanistan and Uzbekistan and Kurdistan and I can't even say it. I can't get it out. You know what it is. Tajikistan. All right. Anyway, get them all together. It includes that whole area. So it's to the east, and ISIS-K has been trying to rally the troops. They want to get the holy warriors together, and just to understand a little bit about Islamic eschatology and about their holy books. You have the Quran. Okay, the Quran is what was conveyed by Muhammad as the prophet, and it means recitation or readings. Okay, and so these are the words of Allah as recorded and delivered by Muhammad. Okay, then you have what they call the Sunnah, and that means a clear path, a well-trodden path, and it is whatever Muhammad did or condoned or condemned, and so all of his sayings and customs and teachings that he did, because they have to be followed, because Muhammad was the perfect example. Okay, so then they had the Hadith. Now the Hadith is a record of sayings and deeds by Muhammad, and they were all collected by Muslim clerics during Muhammad's lifetime and afterwards. And here's the important part of that is lots of their end-time beliefs and practices, very important end-time beliefs and practices, are found in the Hadith. Okay? Now, what ISIS-K is doing is they are reminding the Islamic world of some of the Islamic teaching in the Hadith. And I'm going to read what it says. There will emerge from Khorasan black banners, which nothing will repel until they're set up in Jerusalem. When the black flags come from Khorasan, go to them, even if you have to crawl on snow, for among them is the Caliph of Allah, the Mahdi. Then the black banner will come from the east, and they will kill you in unprecedented manner. When you see them, then pledge your allegiance to them, even if you have to crawl over the snow, for what that is the Caliph of Allah, Mahdi. And so they are expecting to have a troop of Islamic holy warriors, all right, coming out of the east, traveling under the banner of black flags. And you've seen the black ISIS flag, traveling under the banner of the flag, and they're going to go and plant that victoriously in Jerusalem and conquer Jerusalem? Well, we do know that the Lord told the disciples in Luke chapter 21, the Olivet Discourse, that there was going to be a future time when Jerusalem will be surrounded by armies, and that is going to happen during the 70th week in Daniel's 70th week, and it'll occur in the last half of the end of the 70th week. Now, what we're thinking is that we're looking at the context here would be the sixth trumpet judgment. And in the sixth trumpet judgment, that's Revelation chapter 9, it tells us that there's four angels that are bound at the Euphrates River, and that's modern day Iraq. They're gonna be loosed in anticipation of the advance of a 200 million man army. Then in Revelation 16, you have the Lord's sixth bowl judgment, and that's when the Euphrates runs dry in preparation for these armies to march in an epic battle. And of course, this is the Battle of Armageddon. Now, interesting, when you look at their eschatology, their deliverer, their Mahdi, is our Antichrist, and our Antichrist, it's just flipped on its head, just backwards. And so the thing is, what they're anticipating, this Messiah figure is going to come, but the battle they're talking about, when they have all these come down, this is going to be for the Battle of Armageddon, and the guy that's leading it is the Antichrist. They say it's their Mahdi, it's the Antichrist. And of course, the King of Kings, the Lord of Lords, is going to descend, and he'll take care of that. He's going to crush Satan's seed, and he'll establish his rule on earth. And so, very interesting. They're talking about this, preparing for this, and we have talked before about this Islamic caliphate they're trying to put together. Right now, Iran is trying to do this, and they've established a crescent of power from Lebanon all the way around to the Houthis at the bottom of Saudi Arabia there in Yemen, and that has gotten hammered pretty good here lately because of the war that's going on with Israel and the intervention that we've had trying to keep the shipping open there. But so is Turkey. For years, Turkey has been busy getting military positions all up and down the Red Sea and all in that whole area, trying to surround Saudi Arabia and cut her off, okay? And because if they're going to reestablish the Ottoman Empire, they want that territory because they think they should be the custodians of the holy cities of Mecca and Medina. And the statements right now that Saudi Arabia is putting out with King Solomon, that they want to have this modern Islamic position where we're not going to have extremism because we want to get along with everybody, and we want to promote tourism, we want to have all this economic prosperity and all this development. That doesn't set well with them. They said they have abandoned their stewardship. They're supposed to be the ones that are guarding Mecca and Medina, and here they're taking this position and they're wanting to invite all the infidels into town. And so both Turkey, and Qatar, they were in the news too. They're part of the Muslim Brotherhood. Turkey welcomed Hamas right after the October 7th event. Thousands of people, Istanbul, and they said to Israel, "We are coming for you." And so, we see these things happening, and I think as we begin to see some of these things gel as far as the positions and where how they're gonna develop Gaza and that area, and how the Accords move forward. Some of the players align up with what we have in Daniel chapter 11, and I'm going to hit that just right quick, and then we'll close, because we know what to look for. So let's look together, Daniel chapter 11. Oh, I can actually get it. I'm already here. And Daniel chapter 8 is in here too. Let's look at that. The thing is
8 or 11?
8.
8.
Yeah. Okay. The thing is, Daniel chapter 8 begins with the Medo-Persians, okay? It concludes with Greece. It's just an expansion of Daniel chapter 2 versus chapter 7. Like I said, they're telling the same story over and over. They just use different characters, figures, give it a little more information as they move along. But Daniel 2 tells us about a conquering Islamic caliphate. It becomes then a revived caliphate. Daniel 7 tells the same story, only introduces the information about the little horn, and it rises out. The Islamic caliphate's going to control 3 kingdoms. You know, he's going to put together 10, and it talks about the first 3 kingdoms that fall are going to be Egypt and Sudan, oh boy, forgot here. Anyway, in that area, going to control 3 of them, but it's going to line up for a conflict. These 4 generals after Alexander the Great that took over, they set up kingdoms or dynasties, and the 2 strongest ones was the Seleucids in the north and the Ptolemaic in the south. Okay, ultimately they're going to be at war with one another. The king of the south is going to move on the king of the north. He's going to be destroyed, and Egypt, Libya, and Sudan. Those are the 3. They're going to fall first. The other kingdoms are going to fall in with the kingdom of the king of the north. We believe that the Antichrist is coming out of the Seleucid dynasty, and so most likely when you identify all the players up there, it's going to be Turkey, Gog and Magog, and anyway, we're going to see that come about. So what we're looking for is we're going to see that these 2 main kingdoms or dynasties become the power players and the conflict there. And when they come down, by the way, with Turkey during the 70th week of the Antichrist, Iran will be part of that coalition. It'll be the whole thing, and all those holy warriors out of Khorasan. You take that whole area, the kings of the east, you look at where they are, that is exactly east of Israel, of Jerusalem. And they come down, and it's going to be Battle of Armageddon. And that's when the judgment falls on all of these Muslim majority nations that surrounded Israel. So, yeah.
We've got about 2 minutes.
Okay. So we'll just say king of the south, Ptolemaic, is going to attack the king of the north. You got Turkey, Syria, and Iraq. That's the main area they're going to crush Egypt, the 3 kings, and the 7 other Islamic nations there we're going to throw in with him, and that's his kingdom, 10 nations. Okay.
You might have time for a question or 2.
Yeah, have you got any questions? Anybody? Okay. I'm sorry I had to hurry. We went over a lot of stuff, skipped a lot of stuff that we really should have put in there. But I wanted to try to answer Howie's question a little better and bring you up a little bit of an update. But there are a lot of things happening right now in the Middle East that our news doesn't cover, but it's very, very important as we see the time of the Lord's return drawing near. And we just want to keep our eyes on what's going on, and it should as we think about these things, we see these prophecies being fulfilled, move us to a greater zeal to be faithful in evangelism and trying to win these people to the Lord, as well as to be living a life that's a holy life that would be pleasing to the Lord when He comes, that we might be the kind of witnesses that we need to be in these latter days, that we might be able to stand for the Lord. It's becoming more and more, we're seeing more and more opposition to Christians standing up. We just saw a terrible thing happen this week in Seattle with all the protests and everything against Christians that tried to meet together in a public park. And you'll see more of that as time goes on. Anyway, let's pray. Father, we do love you tonight. We thank you for your scriptures and the word to guide us. And we pray, Father, you give us wisdom and understanding. And we pray, Father, we might be found faithful in your sight.